Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, I'm your host. And tonight, we're dimming the lights a little to dive into a true story that still sends chills down my spine just thinking about it. Imagine this: a filthy, chaotic urban landfill where a ragged scavenger known only as Old Dog hunts through trash cans every day, collecting plastic bottles and leftover food, and sleeps in abandoned buildings at night. Passersby cross the street to avoid him, assuming he's just a pitiful, harmless, homeless man. But no one could have guessed that inside the mind of this lowest of the low figure lived 12 completely distinct personalities, taking turns, taking the wheel of his one body, committing at least 8 seemingly unrelated murders. It wasn't until he planned his next massacre, intending to clean up all the trash people in a slum in one go, that he was caught red-handed by a SWAT team and eventually sentenced to death. Today, I'm walking you through this fractured mind like an FBI profiler chatting beside a garbage dump. We'll uncover exactly how these 12 personalities took turns killing, who was in control during his arrest, and finally, I'll give you 5 highly practical mental boundary lessons to keep your own inner selves from spiraling out of control amid high-pressure daily life. Got your coffee ready? Let's step into this wasteland. Old Dog was in his 50s, wandering the edges of the city between landfills and derelict buildings. To everyone around him, he was quiet, empty-eyed, only focused on scavenging for cash and wrapping himself in tattered blankets after dark. No one spoke to him, and he never initiated conversation. Yet it was in this desperate, bottom-rung survival that his mind began to fracture. And no one foresaw that these splits would eventually turn him into a killing machine. The first murder happened in a secluded alley. A wealthy businessman was beaten to death with a blunt object, with nothing left at the scene but piles of trash. Police wrote it off as a robbery homicide and thought little of it. Then came the second, third, and more killings, each with a completely different modus operandi, leaving investigators completely baffled. The investigation dragged on for more than 2 years, with leads repeatedly going cold. That is, until surveillance footage captured Old Dog talking to himself, constantly switching voices and tones. Police began to suspect this homeless man might not be just one person. When they brought him in for a psychiatric evaluation, the truth exploded into the open. Now let's dim the lights even further and step deep inside Old Dog's head. According to psychiatric assessments and interrogation records, 12 separate identities truly existed within his mind, each with its own name, age, personality, even distinct accents and body language. Every murder was committed by a different personality behind the wheel. The wealthy businessman was killed by the cold-blooded killer identity, street thugs by the raging warrior. Each personality believed it was protecting the whole, unaware it was dragging Old Dog into the abyss. Imagine this. Early one morning, he's waiting in a landfill for someone to throw out leftover food, when his personality suddenly shifts. The gentle child identity weeps for food, the killer identity plots to murder everyone in line, and the preacher identity begins sermonizing that these ordinary people need purification. This was Old Dog's daily reality. Holy crap, that's how the human brain splits into 12 killers without you even noticing. Honestly, if I were stuck in a Silicon Valley-style environment, crushed by KPI pressure and rent bills, would I also split into a few alternate selves to escape? Just thinking about it sends chills down my spine. So who exactly were these 12 personalities? Let's break them all down. Old Dog's childhood was living hell. Starting at age 5, his alcoholic father beat him like a punching bag, while his mother was completely absent, always out chasing her own pleasures. Each time he was beaten within an inch of his life, his mind began to fragment as a defense mechanism. His first split occurred at age 8, after his father whipped him unconscious with a belt. When he woke up, a new identity emerged inside his head. Little Bao, an 8-year-old child who only cried and begged, Dad, don't hit me. I'll be good. As the abuse worsened, more personalities emerged. By the time he ran away from home at 15, all 12 identities were fully formed. Here they are in full. 1. Little Bao, 8-year-old child. Innocent, tearful, only craving comfort, responsible for escaping pain. 2. Scar, 35-year-old killer, cold, calculating, in charge of cleaning up trash with clean, efficient murder methods. 3. Warrior, 28-year-old rage identity. Bloodthirsty, impulsive, uses violence to prove dominance. 4. Preacher, 45-year-old hypocritical identity. Spews religious rhetoric justifying murder as soul purification. 5. Mother, 42-year-old female identity. Gentle yet pathological, acting as the mother old dog never had, lulling other identities to sleep. 6. Judge, 50-year-old rational identity. Self-righteous, deciding who deserves to die and be judged. 7. Thief, 16-year-old teen identity. Cunning, greedy, handles theft and escape. 8. Painter, 22-year-old artistic identity. Sensitive, imaginative, viewing murder scenes as artwork. 9. Veteran, 55-year-old military identity. Disciplined, treating life like a battlefield. 10. Smiler, 30-year-old deceptive identity. Kind on the surface, highly manipulative, responsible for public camouflage. 11. Weeper, 12-year-old fearful identity. Paralyzed by terror, sends out internal distress signals. 12. Core, old dog's original self, 40-year-old host. The weakest of all, constantly having control seized by the other 11. These 12-inch roommates were like 12 versions of himself, trapped in one body, constantly pulling in opposite directions. It's like running 12 alternate accounts in a video game, each with its own mission, all fighting over the same resources, until the whole game collapses. Old Dog himself was unaware of these personalities. He would only wake up with blood on his clothes or have no memory of what had happened. That is the most terrifying part of dissociative identity disorder. You think you're in control of your life, but your mind has long been hijacked by inner roommates. Full disclosure, when I was a kid, a scolding from my parents felt like the end of the world. If I'd been beaten daily like Old Dog, I probably would have split into a procrastinator identity and a checkout identity. But Old Dog had no choice. His mind survived by splitting, yet in doing so, turned him into a killer. These roommates grew stronger and eventually began fighting for total control. In his later years, the 12 personalities were no longer cooperating. They were at open war. Scar the Killer wanted to eliminate all trash. The Warrior wanted to prove strength through violence. Little Bao only wanted a safe place to sleep. The Preacher ranted nonstop about mass purification. They held councils inside his mind. Whenever Old Dog fell asleep or zoned out, 12 voices screamed at each other. The worst fight erupted while planning his next massacre. Scar proposed, "Next week the slum night market will be packed. Let's take out 50 trash people at once." The Warrior immediately agreed. "Yes, knives, fire, any weapon we can find." The Preacher draped the plan in religious dogma. "This is God's will. We are purifying the world." Little Bao whimpered in terror. "I'm scared. I don't want to kill anyone." Smiler kept up the disguise, smiling at passerby and saying, "Nothing's wrong. I'm just picking trash." The internal chaos grew violent. An Old Dog's body spun out of control. He'd suddenly switch personalities mid-step, muttering to himself, jolt upright in the middle of the night, his eyes flickering between gentleness and murderous rage. Police later found his trash diary, in which the personalities even threatened one another. Keep stealing control, and I'll erase you. Eventually, the massacre plan was finalized. Old Dog, controlled by Scar the Killer, began gathering weapons, scouting locations, and mapping routes. Then, on the night before the attack, police laid an ambush based on a tip. When SWAT officers burst in, Old Dog's body immediately shifted to the warrior identity, charging at police screaming, only to be tasered and subdued on the spot. In that moment, the 12 personalities erupted into total chaos inside his mind. Scar shouted, "This is your fault for messing up the plan." Little Bao sobbed, "We're going to die." The preacher kept yelling, "This is God's test." Holy crap, that's how the human brain collapses when its own fragments start fighting each other. If you're trapped in NFL-level daily pressure, crushed by bosses, mortgages, family responsibilities, do you ever let different voices inside your head start fighting too? That's why we must seize the wheel before it's too late. After the arrest, an even more bizarre scene unfolded in court. The day Old Dog was brought to trial, the entire courtroom erupted in shock. The 12 personalities began taking the stand one after another. First came Little Bao, speaking in the high, trembling voice of an 8-year-old. "Sir, I'm scared. I didn't do anything. I just want to go home and sleep." The judge and jury froze. Before the court could react, his voice dropped into a cold, deep growl. Scar had taken over, sneering. "Those trash deserve to die. I just freed them early. What's wrong with that?" Seconds later, the warrior burst out, roaring, "Go on! Shoot me right now! I ain't afraid!" His body lunged forward, only to be restrained by bailiffs. Then Weeper broke down, screaming, "I don't want to die! I don't want to die!" One by one, the 12 personalities cycled through in the courtroom, weeping, laughing, cursing, preaching. The defense attorney tried to ask questions, but each sentence was met with a different voice. The scene descended into a surreal, chaotic spectacle of mental fragmentation. The judge banged the gavel repeatedly to no avail, finally calling a recess. Everyone in the courtroom stared in disbelief. None had ever seen a single person perform an entire cast of roles on the witness stand. That is the most horrifying aspect of dissociative identity disorder, when those inner roommates spiral completely out of control, even the law struggles to respond. Key psychological takeaways. Dissociative identity disorder. Extreme trauma causes the brain to split automatically as a self-protective mechanism. Internal power struggles. The 12 personalities act like NFL players from opposing teams fighting over the same ball, ultimately destroying the whole person. Trauma-locked identity stasis. Each personality remains frozen in the moment of childhood abuse, unable to mature. Why does extreme poverty and trauma so often push people toward identity splitting? Because those at the bottom have no safety buffer. People with money and resources can seek therapy, take time off work, or change environments to heal from trauma. But a homeless scavenger like Old Dog, after being abused, he could only keep digging through trash to survive. To avoid total mental collapse, his brain had no choice but to split new identities to share the pain. It's like being crushed in a Black Friday shopping crowd. Some people can call an Uber and leave, while others have no choice but to keep enduring because they have nowhere else to go. That's poverty-level trauma. No escape routes, only cutting suffering into 12 pieces for 12-inch cells to carry. Even more frightening, harsh street life continuously strengthens these fractured identities. Violence, hunger, and discrimination in the landfill feed dark identities like Scar and Warrior, making them stronger. Meanwhile, weaker ones like Little Bao and Weeper shrink further, hiding away in constant fear. This is why even ordinary people must stay vigilant. We may not endure old dog's extreme abuse, but daily workplace stress, family conflict, and financial anxiety quietly feed our own negative inner voices. If we don't raise red flags early, those small voices will grow stronger and seize control. That's why I always emphasize, protecting your mental boundaries isn't a luxury for the rich. Everyone needs to learn how. Especially when you feel multiple voices arguing inside your head, it's time to pause and ask, who's driving? Me or my inner roommates? The good news is, while we can't fully avoid trauma, we can build defenses ahead of time. Guys, don't just walk away shaken by this dark story. Let's turn it into actionable tools. Here are 5 mental boundary lessons designed to be practiced like weekly gym workouts. 1. Highway 101, Personality Cruise Check. While driving or walking each week, ask yourself, have I let negative emotions take the wheel lately? How many voices are arguing in my head? Hit the brakes as soon as you spot a red flag. 2. 3. Starbucks mental boundary. Practice spend 5 minutes each day listing lines no inner identity or thought is allowed to cross. Just as you'd order coffee by saying no sugar, tell your dark impulses no, firmly and calmly. 4. 5. NFL-style weekly emotional review like athletes. Watching game footage, reflect on your emotions each weekend. Ask, where did I almost lose control this week? After 1 month of consistency, your unified self-radar will be dramatically sharper. 6. 7. 3 early red flags of identity. Unraveling watch for these warning signs. 8. Sudden, extreme mood swings. Periods of memory loss or blackouts. Audible internal dialogue between distinct voices. If any appear, reach out to a mental health professional immediately. 1. Unified self-training. Spend 10 minutes daily on the steering wheel meditation. Close your eyes, imagine gripping the wheel, and tell all inner voices firmly, I'm driving today, everyone listens to me. During the arrest, SWAT officers burst in as Old Dog, controlled by the warrior, charged screaming, only to be tasered into submission. In court, 12 personalities cycled endlessly. Little Bow begging for mercy, Scar sneering, the preacher still sermonizing. The judge ultimately handed down a death sentence. Shortly before execution, surveillance captured his final personality shift. Scar the killer muttered softly, this time, I'm driving. Then, silence. Guys, what's your biggest takeaway from this story? Drop a comment below. Which mental boundary lesson will you practice first? Like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you never miss our deep dives into twisted criminal psychology. Remember, protect your mind. It's worth more than any landfill. Action list. Screenshot to save. 1. Highway 101 personality cruise check. 2. Starbucks mental boundary practice. 3. NFL-style weekly emotional review. 4.3 Early red flags of identity unraveling. 5. Unified self-training. Stay safe, stay sharp. See you next time at the dump.